Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Varied Life. I'm Steve, the retired hobby tech guy, and today we're going to be discussing being retired in Korea, being that expat who sold everything in the United States house, car, guns, ammo, car, truck, everything in the kitchen junk drawer. And we packed up a couple of suitcases and we retired early. We retired overseas. We ended up here in Korea, and it has been very interesting. We're looking at just over 2 years, so that's kind of interesting. And we've done a number of things. The wife has F4 visa. I have an F1 visa, and things are going good. We have an apartment, we have a car, we have refrigerator, washer and dryer. We just got a new washer and dryer, and doing some hobby stuff and laser and going to the gym and fitness and living our best lives now. It's great that we can retire early, but we wouldn't have been able to do that unless we retired overseas. So with that being said, there are some fun things that happen overseas when you retire in a overseas location or you're an expat. And today we're exploring the expat life in Korea, from martial law to impeachment and other stuff. Yeah, it's quite interesting. In case you've been living under a rock or you're stuck on TikTok, you might not have noticed that Korea declared martial law back on, what was it, 3 December? And what happened was, in the late hours of the evening, isn't it funny how coups and martial law is always declared during the dark of night? And what ended up happening is President Yoon of South Korea, the People's Power Party, which is kind of like the right conservative side supposedly, versus the Democratic side, which is the left. So it's kind of a two party system that we have here. And he declared martial law because of the opposition of the other side of the fence was a detriment to Korea and so on and so forth. And so he called martial law. And there was military there was police. They were, he told the police and the military to get the left people out, the opposing side of the politics that go on here in Korea, to kick them out of the National Assembly building, that they have where they do these votes in the dark of night. And it ends up, he thinks that they're subversive. And so, martial law was the answer. The last time martial law was enacted here in Korea was, I think, 1979 or 1980. And prior to that, all the times that there was martial law, it's never ended well. There's no positive connotations that come to mind in the Korean people, or for those that know the history of Korea. Just nothing good comes of it. And so, it didn't strike the hearts of any Koreans or even expats here in Korea. I mean, I live here, I'm retired here, not my monkey, not my circus, but it still affects us in some way, shape, or form, to the foreigners and people that are living here in Korea, which I love Korea. Korea's great. It's awesome. People are polite. They obey the laws of the land. They're respectful. They're honorable. They're hardworking. I mean, it's just the crime rate is low, and that's evidence is the crime rate being low, and it's just a whole different world. And people are way more respectful and polite here in Korea than what we experienced in the United States. And so that was kind of another draw of retiring in Korea. But with that being said, a lot of stuff has gone on. So martial law was enacted, and the images when you say martial law, you think like Pol Pot, the Mao Zedong and martial law, and a number of other things where people died. Unfortunately, we don't have that. That's not what happened. Or I should say, fortunately, that didn't happen. What happened was it really put a bad light on Korea, and unfortunately, as an outsider looking in, it was just not something that was probably a good idea to do, and now the country's in a uproar. For those of you who don't know, it ends up that here in Korea, they've been having they've been having protests where you have 150,000 to 200,000 people in Seoul that are protesting against the call for martial law. And it was revoked after the National Assembly, kind of like their parliament came together, they did a vote, and yeah, they squashed it. So there is a system of checks and balances here in Korea. But the fact that martial law was called into effect for X amount of hours just shows there's a lot of problems going on. And part of those problems has to do with Yoon himself. And if you read the Korean news sources, you will find out that he is under scrutiny for a lot of things. One of those things is his wife, the First Lady, who has been doing things she probably shouldn't have been doing, like accepting gifts and expensive handbags, which you think, what's the big deal? And then there's the German stock thing that's going on, and so there's stock manipulation and giving of gifts and things that presidents and first ladies should not be doing. And so there's a theory that President Yoon did all this, called martial law, and that he would be impeached and he would be out and his wife would be out, and then all the investigations would stop. So that would stop any of the untoward accumulation of money in stocks and all kinds of bad things that presidents and their wives shouldn't be doing. That's one theory. Okay, that's kind of a fan theory that's going on. But whether that is real or not, it just wasn't a good idea to declare martial law. And so now this sent ripples all out through Korea, unfortunately. And it has affected tourism. It has affected businesses that deal, Korean businesses that deal with other countries and vice versa. Countries that are like, hey, we're going to go and we're going to do business in Korea, and then a martial law. And it's like, ooh, yeah, let's hold off a little bit and we'll see what happens. Because when you declare martial law, that is a huge thing, and it usually means that there is a lot of instability. There's no stability in the country, and so that is a huge red flag for other countries and businesses and tourism about Korea. As I've been searching the interwebs, it ends up that there's a lot of people who have said that they're going to make a trip to Korea, but because of the martial law, and even though it was voted down, again, there's no positive things that come to mind when you say martial law. And so people that had scheduled vacation trips and so on to Korea to visit, because it is an awesome place, the food, the people, the local attractions and all of that, Soraksan, the beach, just some incredible things here in Korea. But these people ended up saying, yep, we're canceling our trip. And so that's going to hurt tourism. And that's exactly what it's been doing. It's also had a fallout in the financial sectors because as soon as martial law was declared, their stock market took a dip, and people are reeling from that, and so that wasn't good. And then it just it's not over. Unfortunately, there's a lot of fallout. And matter of fact, we're going to take a look at some of the fallout a little bit later on, as far as, well, we might as well just look at it now. I did have an idea of what we were going to talk about, but we're just kind of go with the flow. Here is a chart of the US dollar to Korean won. And so basically what it comes down to is that for $1 US, it's 1,430.83 Korean won, which what it is. And that is, that's a lot, because normally it's, kind of around this range. Well, actually, that's 1 month. But normally what we end up seeing is around 1350, 1300s, low 1300s. That's usually what we've seen. And if you even go back a couple years further, you can end up doing an average. We got some dips where it's down in the 12s. So, we're looking at about 1300 is kind of the average along here. But within the last month, you can see that everything was kind of going okay. It was kind of going down. And it ended up on December 3rd, which is right there at 1403. And the fallout is that the Korean won went to 1436. So the exchange rate definitely went higher, which is bad for Koreans and people that don't have US dollars. And then we just see it just keeps going up, and then it dips, and then it keeps going up. We got 1437, and it's kind of leveling, but the Korean government is now in reaction mode. And so they're trying to, according to the Korean news, the government is trying to offset the problems that have been caused by Yoon declaring martial law and the negative ripples that this has done to the economy in tourism and business and so on and so forth. Now, for expats, there's two sides to every coin, and that's with everything. The bad thing is it's bad. It's a bad exchange rate for Korean won, but if you're a person who has American dollars or US dollars, you're getting a lot more for your money. So the difference between 1300 and 1430 or 1437, I think we ended up seeing a high of what was it, 1440 locally, because you have local money exchange shops, and I think 1440 was a high there. And the Korean government is trying to do everything it can to bring that exchange rate back to normal. The problem is there's some other sources that are saying the exchange rate is going to get worse before it gets better, and we might even see 1400 or 1450 to 1500 won per dollar, which is huge. That is the country's going to reel from that, and depending on how long that goes, it's going to be rough. But the reactionary measures on all this is going to affect banking, it's going to affect finance, it's going to affect housing, so the economy, inflation is still going on, and yeah, it's just not a good time to call martial law. For us, it's great, or people that have American dollars and exchanging to Korean won, it's going to go a lot further than what we imagine. So let's say we've got $10,000 and we multiply that by 1,300 won, and so you would get 13 million won. Well, if you take that same $10,000 and then you do the math and you do, let's say, 1440, and what you're going to end up with is 14,400,000. So we're looking at about 1.5 million won difference. So, which is about $1,000. So there's $1,000 difference that we have been able to realize through currency exchange because of what has been going on, somewhere in that ballpark. So yeah, it's not good for the Koreans because their money is not going as far as it used to. It's just not really that good. So anyway, I want to continue on and kind of show you some of the other stuff that's going on here. Like, for example, the fallout isn't over. Here in Korea, they're trying to impeach the president. And with that impeachment process, they did one vote, and according to their government, they have like between 24 and 72 hours to vote for impeachment and stuff. And, personally, in my opinion, I don't think declaring martial law to oppose the other political side was the way to go, even if the other political side is doing something that you don't like, that you absolutely hate. This is kind of a knee-jerk reaction, in my opinion only. And so now the fallout from this is even worse. And so what we end up seeing here is that the police conclude a raid on Yoon's office after being blocked. So the police had gone in to gather files to see what was going on, and the president's people in office, no, you can't do that. No, and so now there's a lot of more fighting. If there wasn't anything to hide, then why would you try to block people, law enforcement, from getting the files that are supposed to be accessible to the people, at least to the government, kind of like an oversight committee or whatever. Yeah, and it gets even worse. Police defense minister joins efforts. The former defense minister attempts suicide. This is just rippling out, and then we have general plays games in martial law hearing, and he's there. There he is. We'll take a look at that. Yeah, kind of amazing. And the Korean people as a whole have ended up stating that he should be held accountable for his actions, and that they're reckless and irresponsible, and the fact that he shouldn't have called martial law because of the fallout to the country and the people and the so on and so forth. And again, declaring martial law is not a good thing in any country whatsoever, unless it's like a natural disaster or war breaks out and you declare martial law and people can't come out of their homes after certain times because they could be killed because of, terrorist actions, war, natural disaster, people could get hurt. That makes sense. But because you got a bug up your nose and you don't like the other side politically, that's probably not a good reason, especially with all of the fallout that is happening. And I just find it hard to believe that Yoon would think this would be a good idea, that this would somehow result in a positive end result. And it has done actually the opposite. And so that's why a lot of people are in favor of impeaching the president, and nearly 80%. It's like 76.2 or 3% or 4% or whatever. So a number of surveys, 72.6. People in their 30s showed a high level of support at 85.4%, followed by those in their 40 and 50 by 82.9 and 82.8. Support among the 18 to 29 stood at 73.7%, while 69.8% in their 60s and 59.6% of those 70 or older favored impeachment. So yeah, it's we're looking in the 80% and in some places 90%. In the Hyola region, 93.5%, by Chuncheong region, 79.2%, Busan, Ulsan, South Gyeongsang, 76.7%, Incheon and Gyeonggi-do, we're in Gyeonggi-do where I live, 76.5%, and Seoul, 72.1%. The traditionally conservative Daegu and North Gyeongsang supported impeachment at 61.4%. By political orientation, progressives show the highest level of support at 89.7%, while 77% of moderates and 65.3% of conservatives are in favor. So yeah, it's a lot of people. It just wasn't a good idea. Okay, and the Korean people think so, and they think that he should be held accountable for his actions. But then again, we're in the world of politics. There's bad stuff on the left, there's bad stuff on the right, and people need to be held accountable for their actions regardless of what side that you're on. And that's the thing that's bothering a lot of people. The majority of people that I've met in Korea are good, hardworking people. They follow the law. They're good citizens, and they want their leaders to follow the law and be good citizens. However, we're not seeing that. And again, when we see the problems with the president and his wife and German stock manipulation things, you can get all into that. It is really, really rough. So yeah, we've got that there. The other thing we're going to take a look at is the next one here. The raid on, Yoon's offices. The former defense minister commits attempt suicide while in custody at correctional services. The foreign defense minister, let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. There we go. Attempted suicide while in custody, according to the chief minister of correctional service. He's under investigation for his suspected role in the botched declaration of martial law. And he was taken into custody Sunday after submitting himself for questioning by prosecutors. He made an attempt on his life at 11:52 p.m. on Tuesday while waiting for the outcome of his warrant review hearing, but was discovered midway by a guard on duty. Now, I'm kind of assuming, now this is a huge assumption. When I worked in corrections for 11 years, I was in Colorado Department of Corrections. I worked at Territorial Correctional Facility, which is the oldest prison in Colorado. It was a prison before Colorado was a state. And then I worked at Fremont Correctional Facility. I did a number of years there. And then I also at CSP and worked at some other places, not full-time, but did some tours and stuff there. And usually in prisons, you will have a requirement for guards to go check on inmates like we did, like every hour. Or unless there were special circumstances, then it would be every half hour, or if somebody was under suicide watch, then you'd have somebody actively watching that person. all the time. So the interesting thing is that he tried to commit suicide, but it ends up that a guard found him and he was not harmed by the attempt. So that tells me he didn't really mean it. He's just trying to get attention, and maybe it's some people are saying that he did it to pretend to attempt suicide for the fact that it would show contrition and remorse for his actions, and that in later trials or whatever he could point to and his lawyers could say, well, see, he attempted suicide. That's how much this grieved him. So there's a lot of saving face and moving parts in this political game that we're seeing. So and it's just, and the cool thing is, if you or someone knows feeling emotionally distressed, they have contact numbers here in Korea where you can get English language counseling for depression, and in Koreans as well. So that's kind of a good thing. Something that you don't really see a lot in other countries. But then we continue on, and Yoon actually mentioned martial law as early as the summer, says a key general. So this guy right here, he secured testimony that Yoon brought up the topic of martial law as early as the summer. Counterintelligence Commander Yo In-hyung testified that he was grilled by prosecution, that Yoon mentioned martial law during a dinner gathering in the early summer while discussing the political situations. It's interesting because now some people thought, well, it was just a knee-jerk reaction, and it just, I hate what the opposition side is doing or the other side is doing, so I'm going to declare martial law as just a whim. It's just something that just popped randomly into his head, and that's what he ended up doing. Unfortunately, with this, it's like, wow, he's been thinking about this for a while. So there's more planning involved in this, and of course, with that's why they wanted to get into Yoon's offices, look at his records, and so on and so forth. And now we're getting testimonies of this is going a lot deeper down the rabbit hole than everyone has imagined. And of course, with politics, everything goes deeper. So it's just really kind of interesting. Present at the dinner where Yoon first revealed his thoughts on martial law were Yo and then Chief of the President's Security Service, Kim Yong-hyun, all three alumni of Cheongnam High School. Kim was later made defense minister before giving up the position on December 5th. He said that, you shouldn't say such things when the topic of martial law was raised abruptly. At the time of the dinner, I only thought surely he wouldn't actually declare martial law, Yu said. The president did not present any specific plans for martial law at the time. I simply said with concern, you should not do that. Because martial law is never really the answer unless you're trying to protect the lives of people. Yo testified that Yoon continued to mention the necessity of martial law on multiple occasions afterwards. He seemed to be thinking about it more seriously over time, and I repeatedly advised against it. He declared that he had not received specific instructions or engaged in discussions with Yoon leading up to after the declaration of martial law. I did not know martial law would actually be declared. I only realized it had been enacted upon seeing the president's address on the day of the announcement. He faces charges of insurrection and abuse of power over allegations that on the day martial law was declared, he ordered Defense Counterintelligence Command troops to deploy to the NEC and the National Assembly, demanding the arrest and the detention of lawmakers. And I deeply apologize for causing concern to the public. The troops were deployed past 1 a.m. but returned before reaching the vicinity of the National Assembly or the NEC. This demonstrates the Defense Counterintelligence Command had no prior knowledge of the martial law declaration. So it's really getting interesting here. And as being a former military man myself, now we're starting to see there's more stuff going on. And what we end up seeing here, I am an incompetent and irresponsible commander. Special Forces Unit Chief apologizes for sending troops to the National Assembly. And it's just just not good. It was one of the units that was dispatched for martial law. I was the one who ordered the soldiers to head to the National Assembly and break windows to enter. So he was given the orders by Yoon to smash into windows and get all of the opposition out of the National Assembly building. He said he'll take a responsibility. He admitted that he ordered 197 unit members to the National Assembly to confront people blocking the entrance of the building. The troops are not at fault. They are guilty of anything as following the orders of an incapable commander. Describing the soldiers as your sons and daughters who love this country, Kim said they are the most pitiable victims used by former Defense Minister Kim Jong-hyun. Kim Jong-hyun tendered his resignation, which President Yoon accepted the following day. So just a lot of interesting things are going on, and then here's a picture of an Air Force commander general. Notice he's got his shoes off, and I don't think that's Candy Crush, but it's some type of game. Mobile game on his phone during recess at the National Defense Committee meeting at the National Assembly Complex. Two-star general playing mobile games during recess with his shoes off on the assembly hearing of the martial law declaration. He was reprimanded Wednesday by a member of the opposition party for his behavior during a parliamentary defense committee meeting at the National Assembly Complex. What do you do? I was in the military, and that would be like, you're going to go and you're going to be in front of some of the highest ranking people of your country. The last thing on my mind would be to play a video game and take off my boots and kick back even if nothing was going on, and kick back and just be, I'm going to relax here and get my Candy Crush on. What? That's just in my opinion. Anyway, it ends up there's some other related stuff. You order top brass to bust down the doors and drag out lawmakers on martial law night, which is very interesting because now we get into this aspect of the military was used to assault civilians. Yeah, top brass talking to blocking parliament, arresting lawmakers, underground detention centers on martial law night. $46,000 in damages due to the martial law invasion, and that's going to go up even more. So, it's just kind of, I just don't understand it. Oh, look at this. So this general playing the games at 7:40 p.m. during a brief recess in the meeting, the two-star general was seen playing games on his smartphone while wiggling his toes and socks after removing his military boots. This scene was broadcast live on platforms such as National Assembly Television and YouTube, but the general appeared unaware of the live coverage. After playing the game for 5 minutes, the general was informed of the live broadcast by a staff member who pointed at the camera upon entering the meeting room. He then put his phone down, adjusted his posture, and glanced towards the camera. Probably the realization hit him that, I'm going for early retirement. The meeting resumed around 9 p.m., but by then, news of the Air Force general playing the game had already spread through online communities and media outlets. Nation is in turmoil over the first declaration of martial law in 45 years, and the minister has been arrested. The president is facing charges of rebellion. Are you in your right mind? In what world, especially somebody who's in the military, being in a congressional meetings setting like we would have in the United States. So in other words, you're called to attend this meeting about something that has been declared and was obviously wrong in the last 45 years, and you think it's totally cool to take off your boots and play a video game. Yeah, if I did that in the United States military, in the times that I grew up and served in the military, they would take me out behind the motor pool and just beat the crap out of me. That is just something it was, you just don't do that. You just don't do that. You don't do it as a regular soldier. And if you're a 2-star general, you definitely don't do that when you're in the building that the congressional hearing is being made, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe there's different rules here in Korea. I don't know. Not my monkey, not my circus. But just from my point of view of serving 20 years in the United States Army with a lot of years in Korea, that's not probably a good thing to do. I'm just going to go out on the edge and throw that out there. So yeah, it's just very interesting. And like I said, there's been a number of other things that have gone on. There have been hundreds of thousands. There's 150 to 200,000 people that have been protesting in Korea every day in Seoul about this martial law declaration and the people calling for the impeachment of the president and all the people that were involved, and the fact that they did the first impeachment vote, which is really interesting. They did the first impeachment vote, and all of the left side voted that the president should be impeached. And then they only needed 8 votes from the right side for that impeachment to be approved. Nobody on the right side voted for the impeachment, as far as I know. Now, I think there were a couple of people, but it wasn't the 8 people that they needed. 8. They needed 8, and they didn't get 8. When clearly declaring martial law because you don't like one side for whatever reason is overstepping your presidential powers, and it's an abuse of power, in my opinion. So with that being said, people are mad. That's why you have 200,000 some odd people demonstrating in Seoul every single night, for quite some time now, since calling for the removal of these people from office. It doesn't matter if you're left or right. All of these people think that this is wrong. 80, 90% of these people, 70% of these people think that what happened was absolutely wrong, because it just put the country into a bad place, worse place than what it was before. So yeah, it's really simple. But it ends up that an anonymous donor pays $3,800 worth of coffee for protesters. For coffee at a cafe near the National Assembly to support the participants at candlelit protests calling for Yoon's removal from office because of the martial law. A man in his 50s prepaid for about 1,200 cups of coffee for 5 million won. And the Post said that anyone could receive a free drink by providing the name used for the payment at the cafe. So yeah, I mean, and the interesting thing is that you've got 100 or let's take a look at it here. You've got 100, 150 to 200,000 people that are protesting in Seoul for the removal of certain, political officials, that they should be removed from office because of this martial law thing. And the interesting thing is that when we think of demonstrations in the United States, what brings to my mind is, okay, people are going to be blowing up stuff. They're going to be setting stuff on fire. They're going to be turning over police cars, the usual demonstration stuff that we've seen in our country. Here in Korea, it's a lot different. Even though 150 to 200,000 people went to protest, there are videos of the protesters cleaning up their trash, going around with trash bags and picking up after themselves. So while they are very vocal about their beliefs and calling for, people be held to the letter of the law and that, certain people should be removed from office, and all night they do this, they take the time to clean up after themselves so that it's not a burden to the workers that have to clean up the streets and the trash and so on and so forth. So we're talking a whole different animal here in Korea when we're talking about, protests and things like that. It is definitely not like the protests we see in the United States, or, when sports teams win and then people go shouting and they start breaking in store windows and, flipping over police cars and starting trash cans on fire and just ruining the community that they live in. Here in Korea, the people don't do that. They actually have respect for the people that live there and they clean up after themselves. Another reason I like Korea. They care about their communities, they care about the environment. They don't want to be a burden on anybody else, but they also see the importance of voicing their concerns against the politicians, that did this thing that they did with the martial law. So yeah, it's just very, very interesting on what's going on here in Korea, and the fallout is going to be a long time coming. We've already talked about the won and the exchange rate from the Korean won to the US dollar and other currencies, by the way. It's not just the US dollar, but the US dollar is one of the big ones. And the effects that it's going to have on tourism, which are negative. People are going to be like, martial law, yeah, I think I'll go somewhere else. Which Korea is going to take a hit for that. And it will take a hit for businesses or countries that wanted to do business with Korea that now they're kind of like, well, let's hold off. Let's sit back here and see what happens. Before we pull that trigger to do business with Korea, the martial law thing just probably wasn't a good idea. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. But that kind of gives more credence of why would somebody declare martial law, especially when you're the president. And you could probably say, hey, I'm considering martial law. Wouldn't you want to get with your advisors and find out with the constitutional lawyers and say, hey, is this something that I can do? Or what is the fallout going to be from this? Obviously, I don't know. In any sane world, it's a possible option. I would never do that in this situation. But even if I did, you would probably hold meetings and ask people, is this a good idea or not? What would be the fallout of this if I declared martial law? And in no circumstances would anybody say, yes, this is a viable thing, let's do it and run with it. Which this is what gives credence to the conspiracy theory, the theory that, well, the president chose to enact martial law to get him out of office, to get him impeached with a slap on the wrist, and him and his wife would be out, and they would be removed from any other further prosecution, because that's the biggest fish to fry. And the stock manipulation and the gifts that were given to his wife and other family members, like millions of won, to like either his mother-in-law or her mother or his mother or whatever. There's all kinds of stuff going on as far as money being moved around to certain people within the president's family. And being shown favors and favoritism and, stocks. It's the whole German stock manipulation thing is just incredibly wild. So, that's why some people end up saying that these protests of 150 to 200,000 people in Korea protesting against this martial law is that the president is actually, it's a well thought out exit strategy, so that will remove him from office, and they'll just be like, okay, you're done, you're out of here, that's your punishment. And they won't go investigating any further into his wife's and family's activities, who have benefited, probably not legally, by his position, and thus it would be an abuse of power. So maybe that's what's going on. I'm not sure. It's just not my monkey, not my circus. But since I live here, I have to deal with some of these things. But in all honesty, with the exchange rate, it's bad for the Korean people. It's good for the people who have U.S. dollars because you get more Korean won. So that's good. So that means our money goes farther. But still, it kind of makes me wonder about the political stability of Korea. The good thing is the majority of Korean people, whether they're right or left, they're good, decent, hardworking, law-abiding citizens, and that's what I appreciate. It's not like the United States where if somebody finds out that you're on the right or you're on the left or vice versa, they will try to do violence against you, as we've seen in social media and things like that. It's just not like that here in Korea. You can have your own opinions, but never to the point of where, oh, you believe in this and that, or you're from this side and not my side, or that side and vice versa. So I'm going to spit at you. I'm going to try to get you fired. I'm going to try to do violence on you, put my hands on you, whatever it is, like we see in the United States. death threats and so on and so forth. Yeah, you don't get that here in Korea, okay? Because they see that there's the world of politics, but that should not, your zeal for your side in politics should not overshadow or negate the responsibility to be a mature and adult person who values life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, no matter what side of the fence you're on. So yeah, that's what I like about Korea. I like Koreans. I like Korea. I love the food. I spent a lot of years here. We retired here. But some of the things that you might have to face as being an expat in an overseas country could include some political unrest. There's also the interesting thing is that will people look on me as looking down on me because I'm a foreigner? One, I'm old enough that I don't really care. Two, I'm 6'2" and 260 pounds. So yeah, not a lot of people are going to bother me. But then again, I don't bother anybody else. So I haven't experienced any of that. Now we have run into places that said no foreigners allowed, and they only cater to Koreans and stuff like that. But we've also seen stores where it says, we don't want any Koreans. And these are actually Korean stores that are outside military bases, and they don't want Korean nationals coming in because they realize that the prices are kind of jacked up for the foreigners or the military that live off, close by, and they charge more, which they do. But then again, that happens in every single military town in the world and in the United States. So that's nothing new. But yeah, it's other than that, and that doesn't affect me, because the stuff that they sell, I'll get it cheaper somewhere else. It's just a very different world that we're in. But with that, being retired overseas has allowed us, like I said, to retire early. And I'm 58, and we actually retired. We've been here 2 years, so that would be 56. And then I was 55. We spent a year in Hawaii on Oahu. And before that, I called it quits and said, yeah, we're going to leave. And that's when we ended up going to Hawaii. Way too expensive to retire in Hawaii, obviously. And so we ended up here in Korea. And yeah, it's a thing. So remains to be seen on what's going to go on with the political turmoil that's going on here in Korea and being an expat here. Will there be impeachment? The first impeachment vote didn't go well. And as of this time, let's see if we can find out Korea Yoon impeachment. Let's see. We want within the last 24 hours. Let's see if there's anything. Implication of South Koreans failed. In South Korea, insurrection charges are closing in on the president. Ruling party backs impeachment. Implication of South Korea's failed impeachment vote, which was the first one. Let's see. Domestic political fallout. The vote for Yoon's impeachment on, let's go ahead and we'll blow this up so we can actually see what's going on. This could be interesting. So, repeated calls for impeachment. First Lady Kim Keon-hee's alleged corruption, inflation viewed as a pro-chaebol or conglomerate policies. Further setback, the opposition party took the majority of the National Assembly. In fact, while enacting martial law, Yoon cited the 22 impeachment motions filed against government officials since his inauguration as roadblocks. So in other words, basically you had one side saying, hey, we're not going to do this. So the fallout of this is that it says the vote for Yoon's impeachment on Saturday, December 7th, fell short of the 200 votes necessary, with over 100 People's Party power members choosing not to participate. Following the failed bid for impeachment, yeah, so yeah, they were short, yeah, by just single digits is basically what it came down to. And yeah, just kind of people are mad at the People's Power movement, which is the conservative right movement, in the fact that, you said this was wrong, but yet nobody votes to impeach this guy. And it's just, it's very problematic because it's a very wrong thing to do. Uh, so, yeah, it's foreign policy implications, instability. Yeah, it's just going to have some fallout with Japan. What comes next? Despite the failure of the December 7th impeachment vote, it will continue to push, and they'll have the following vote expected to be held on December 14th, and this being the 12th as of December 11th. Some People's Power Party lawmakers have said that they would vote in the next session a shift from their boycott of the first impeachment vote. If an impeachment motion passes, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo will become the acting president. The Constitutional Court will have 180 days to deliberate. If it upholds the impeachment, so even though they vote to impeachment, it might not still hold, the president would be immediately removed from office and a successor would need to be elected within 60 days of the ruling. Can Yoon come back if he resigns? The odds are looking slim. His presidency, in effect, is in a vegetative state. His points plummeted, and there's a lot of Korean news that goes around that talks about how, he's got some very, very bad numbers. So, and then CNN, let's see, I hate accepting cookies. He refuses to step down over the martial law, which is kind of problematic. We tried to find a better way than impeachment, but that other way is invalid. What? The other way was invalid, but the martial law was an option? I don't know. The main opposition Democratic Party is preparing the new motion. Of course, the other side left Parliament and boycotted the vote, so they didn't even show up. So even though some of them said that that was a bad call, they didn't show up to all this. Just within 6 hours, the leader was forced to back down. Lawmakers forced their way past soldiers into Parliament to strike down the decree. So the whole thing was the martial law kicked the lawmakers out so they could not vote and keep them out of the Parliament because their law says that they must be in Parliament and they can vote. So if you keep them out, they can't vote, and then you can maintain martial law. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. It's just not good. It's just not good. South Korea bans a president from traveling overseas as the insurrection probe widens. So yeah, he's kind of like our favorite horrible IRL streamer. Who is it? Johnny Somali, the Ishmael Ramsey, whatever the dude's name is. He can't leave Korea either. So now him and the president have something in common. They can't leave until all of this stuff is done. So yeah, it's just very problematic, and unfortunately, it's the Korean people that are gonna take the brunt of this. And it kind of reminds me of the doctor strike that has gone on. For those of you who don't know, the government wanted to increase the number of doctors in Korea. Now, it should be noted that the doctors in Korea have not increased their numbers in over 27 years. So even though there's a continuing and increased aging population that needs more doctors, and I can tell you by having boots on the ground and going to hospitals here near Pyeongtaek, up in Seoul, like Samsung Medical Center, which is one of the top 5 biggest hospitals in Korea. Yeah, the doctors' strike has gone on. Residents went on strike, and they're still on strike. It's been a couple of years now, and the government just wanted to add 2,000 more doctors. So if you look at the number of teaching hospitals, and I went over this before in previous videos, would add maybe one person to every two departments or something like that in all the teaching hospitals. And so even though the hospitals and the doctors union are saying they're being overworked, working 150, 180 hours a week, they're seeing or 120 hours a week, but they're seeing a ton of patients to where you only spend like 3 or 4 minutes with a patient, then you go on to the next one. It's kind of like an assembly line type thing, but a lot of stuff can be missed. And now that there are no doctors, the residents have gone on strike. Now that has pushed back appointments 6, 8 months even more. And people that can't get surgeries, appointments, has affected emergency room services. And so the government hasn't done anything because the doctors union, they bluffed and the president called their bluff, and then they tried to outbluff each other, and then the doctors union says, yeah, we're still not going to return back to work, which I don't understand how that is possible because the majority of hospitals are for-profit hospitals. So when the doctors leave, it's not hurting the government, it's hurting the hospitals, which are money-making activities. So yeah, it's a weird thing that's going on here in Korea. It's definitely different than in the United States. It is very different. But the fact that the doctor strike is still going on and the government has reduced the call from 2,000 more doctors down to 1,500, the doctors union that hasn't increased the number of doctors in Korea for the last 27 years, they've always gone on strike, and if they don't go on, and the government always bends their knee. So yeah, that's the kind of the strange world that we live in here, here in Korea, which is interesting. It has affected some of our medical things, It has pushed back some of our appointments. There's other hospitals that we have had to go to because of the doctor strike. And thankfully, we haven't had any serious injuries or complications or anything like that. But there have been a number of Korean people that have died because they haven't been able to get into hospitals because they don't have the doctors. We still get reports on news where people will. There was the one that had the heart attack and went to a hospital. They got rejected, so they went to another hospital, rejected because there's not enough doctors. And finally, they got to like the 7th hospital, and the person ended up dying. And we still get reports of that. And so that doesn't help anybody. But then I don't understand why the doctors union is still so steadfast. But the doctors union reps have said that they're going on strike and they will not waver and they will not add any more doctors, even though you continue to have an ever increasing aged population who needs more doctors because of prestige. They said there's only so much prestige that can go around, and if you hire more doctors, there's less prestige. That was actually what the doctors union says. So, and again, these doctors are not striking against the for-profit hospitals that they're working at. They're striking against the government and the call for more doctors, which actually the government, Yoon's administration, said we want more doctors to be able to work outside of Seoul and in smaller cities and towns. So he actually wanted to provide more medical care for people in outlying areas, and the doctors union didn't like that. And what's interesting is the doctors union also has never come up with anything to say, we don't need more doctors because we can implement this plan and we can get, that's the answer. This is our answer and this is what we'll do. They don't come up with any alternative plans whatsoever. They just stick to the same rhetoric of we can't have more doctors. It would lessen our pay, it would lessen our prestige, and we don't need it. And it's like, yeah, you do. By your own records and your own claims that you're being overworked, working 80-hour, 100-hour weeks, 100-hour weeks, yeah, you do need it. And it's just very, very weird. And people are not asking the right questions either. The news media, different news sources here in Korea, when they do these interviews with the doctors' unions and so on and so forth, they never ask, well, what is your plan to combat being overworked and providing better care to the people? Nobody ever asks that. It's just the same old rhetoric. Oh, we can't share our prestige. We don't need more doctors. Which actually, prior to the doctor strike, Korea was pretty good. but it was still overworked and overwhelmed with so many people and not enough time. So now it is ranked kind of like a third world country in regards to doctor patient ratio. I think Mexico and then some other country, but Korea was like third, according to some surveys that I've read in regards to medical care. So before the doctor strike, we were actually doing pretty good. And afterwards, we're now on third world country level doctor patient ratios. You still can get really good care, but it's just going to take you a hell of a lot longer to get that care. Like I said, 6 to 8 months, 10 months, people are having to reschedule. There's a lot of people that are going to different countries and doing medical tourism out of Korea to other countries because they can't get the care here in Korea. So, yeah. And that's why I exercise and eat right, to try to not go to the hospital. But with that, the other interesting thing here is that if we do have medical complications and we go to the hospital, because we have good medical insurance and we're foreigners and they can charge more, we can get some more preferential treatment as opposed to a normal person. It is what it is. Of course, you see that in the United States. If you have better health insurance coverage than a normal person, or your coverage is better than theirs, which is Barney Basic, of course you're going to get better treatment. And of course it also depends on where you go. You have to go to better hospitals to get better treatments. And that happens everywhere around the world. So that's nothing new. But yeah, there's a lot of hurdles and things that need to be overcome when you retire in an overseas location. But then again, people are like, well, you're going to regret retiring in Korea. And it's like, no, because I got to retire early. And so the trade-off is you're going to have to make some compromises no matter where you live, because as you retire early in another country, there's always going to be things that are different than in the United States. So you need to take the good with the bad, and you need to jump some hurdles and go through some hoops. But in the long end of it, I would rather be able to retire early and be retired longer than staying in the United States with the ever-increasing debts and expenses and so on and so forth, and maybe not retire until I'm mid-60s to 70s, and then I have, maybe 5, maybe 10 years retirement? Whereas if I retire early, I'm going to get more retirement years, and I'll enjoy more and spend more time with the wife and doing hobbies and lasering and engraving and miniatures and painting and all that stuff, fitness. There's always this give and take, unless you're filthy rich, and I'm not filthy rich. So, so that's what we got going on. I thought I'd do a video on this. Some people were asking. Some people were really concerned about the martial law. We're thinking about going on vacation there. Should we cancel? And it's like, no, not really. There's no need to cancel because it's all political games. Those political games don't affect the things that you want to do if you're going to come visit for a week. Let's face it. Matter of fact, because of the exchange rate is really good right now would probably be a good time, or when the exchange rate is high, is a good time because your dollar goes further, or whatever the exchange rate. So yeah, if it was something really serious that I think that would put myself or my family in harm, I would let you guys know. Absolutely, 100%. And I would say, we're bugging out and we're out of here because, the situation is unstable. Don't come here for vacation because of A, B, C, D, and E. But that's not the case here. So, that's what we got going on. So kind of dispelling some myths, telling what's going on. And, it's very interesting. The thing that gets up my nose is the fact that Yoon's party that he belongs to, the People's Power Party, or Power People Party, or whatever it is, decided to boycott the vote for his impeachment for his martial law stunt, which had devastating effects on the country as a whole. Yeah, I find that very lacking. I to say the least, even though I don't vote here in Korea, I find that as an affront for a decent, hard-working citizen. How can you not vote against what he did? I just don't get it. But then again, I'm not Korean. My wife is. She's an American citizen now, but yeah, it's just very problematic. And I couldn't live with myself. Of course, I would never call for martial law. It's like he did. It just doesn't make sense, and you should be accountable for your actions. Just as we teach our children to be good citizens, obey the law, work hard, have a good, strong work ethic, treat people with respect and honor, shouldn't we expect our leaders to have those same attributes in their own lives, same characteristics? Yeah, I think they should. So no wonder there's a lot of people that are pissed off about Korea. And the president, and whether it's the right or the left or everybody in between, we're going to find out that there's more ducks in the barrel than what we see, and it's going to go a lot deeper. That barrel is going to be really deep, and people are going to dig more and more and more. So now it's compounding the problem. If you find even more problems, and there's inaction, people are going to get even more pissed off at the government. And now Yoon is saying that he refuses to step down over the martial law. He's got like the lowest rating, I think, of recent presidents. So yeah, it's probably not looking good for him. I think the only way, in my small, uneducated mind, is that you take the L, and if you're the administration or you're the party that Yoon belonged to, you need to do some house cleaning. And it needs to be it needs to be real. You need to clean house, and of course the left needs to clean house as well. But you need to clean your house, you need to promise to do better, and you need to have action behind it. Because if you just bump your gums all day and saying, oh, before they're like, oh, we're gonna, get into this and blah 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 blah. Yeah, I was irresponsible, blah. And then when it comes time to vote, you're just like, nope, we're gonna boycott the vote. We're not gonna vote. That shows your actions speak louder than words. And so I think that's why a lot of Koreans are pissed off, and rightly so, in my opinion. But then again, yeah, just some of the hurdles that you'll see of being retired overseas. Now, one person sent me a message and asked, does this bother me? In other words, do I lose sleep over this? No, I don't. It's just like we have politics in the United States where the left doesn't like the right doesn't like the left, and then you have the weirdos and the extremists on both sides. I'm middle of the road independent. I'm for the good ideas, whether they're right or left, as long as they're good ideas and make sense. Yeah, I don't spend nights awake worried about what is going to go on with the presidency here in Korea and the political situation, because it'll eventually work itself out. But if it changes, I'll let you know. That's for sure. So that's it. I think that's it. That's enough. That's enough for today. One caveat, that IRL streamer, Ishmael Ramsey, whatever his name, Johnny Somali, who's not Somali at all, he's actually Ethiopian. According to Legal Mindset, his trial it was supposed to be here in December, and now it's been kicked back to 7 March. And there's talks about additional charges for him. He can't make money. He can't leave Korea. And so I think Korea's just given him enough rope to hang himself a little bit more. So, Johnny, keep doing what you're doing. And the problem with Johnny is that he recorded everything. He recorded all the crimes that he did. And hopefully Korea will hold his feet to the fire and prosecute him to the max term that they can. And because the guy's a nuisance, he's a race baiter. He wants a race war. He called for the extermination of all Asians, and he's really a despicable human being. And I don't use that term a lot, but he is really a disgusting human being, and I feel sorry for his parents. I really, really feel sorry for his parents. Could you imagine being Johnny Somali's parents, Ishmael Ramsey, whatever his name is? Can you imagine being his parents? That would be horrible. That would be like, as you're talking with your friends and, oh, my son's a doctor, mine's a lawyer. Oh, mine, got a promotion at work. And what about your son, Ishmael Ramsey's? yeah, he got arrested in Israel, Japan. He spent some jail time in Japan, and now he's being investigated in Korea. Yeah, he's twerking in front of, yeah, it's just picking fights, assault, sexual assault, insults, crimes against minors. It's just, he's doing okay. Yeah, imagine the shame his parents have. If Johnny Somali was my kid, I don't know if he'd be my kid for long, but I would definitely disown him, and because of the stupid stuff that he's doing. And he has no respect. He has no moral compass, in my opinion, and he's a waste of DNA. So, of course, I'm sure he disagrees, but that's okay. I don't really care about him. But yeah, I hope he gets punished to the max, and we'll see what happens, because there is this thing that, he'll get a slap on the wrist and he'll be banned from Korea from ever coming back. Will it be a slap on the wrist because they just don't want to deal with his BS? Or are they really going to put the screws on him and try to teach him a lesson and say, hey, yeah, 10, 15, 20 years in prison? Yeah, you won. You're the next contestant on Do Stupid, F around and find out. And hopefully that's the case. But I don't know. We'll see. It's interesting. I really hope they nail his ass to the ground on this. So anyway, if you have questions about me being an expat here in Korea, retired overseas, you can email me. You can put it in the comments section. I'm a little behind on comments. You shoot me an email, and I've helped a lot of veterans share our experiences on how we got to retire here in Korea. And a number of people have actually decided to cash in and retire in Korea, with their Korean spouse, and that it is possible. So there's that. And in passing, the last thing I want to leave for you is to like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. And if you get anything else out of it and you feel the need, any compulsion whatsoever to do something above and beyond, you can always buy me a coffee, and that's in the description box down below. So yeah, there it is. Being retired in Korea, exploring the expat life and martial law, impeachment, and all this other stuff. It's quite exciting, but it's definitely better than working and not being retired. So that's it. We'll see you on the next video. Peace. Yeah, good stuff.